I'd do that shit.
I was listening to a podcast by the inventor of Ethereum, and he was talking about how there is a threshold that you can reach where you can have bad players basically fuck with the blockchain. And so if we back up a little bit, I'll bastardize an explanation of how blockchain works. But basically it's looking at all the different users involved in a cryptocurrency transaction. So let's say you and me, Tony. And
can I be the bad guy?
You can be the bad guy. Just so you know, Batman's here, though.
It's okay.
Get ready. So
I'm not opposed to getting my ass kicked for a story.
So if I'm trying to send you some money or Bitcoin, we'll use Bitcoin as an example, then I'm going to go through 2 or 3 different servers to get to you, and all the different players that are involved in that transaction basically have to process the sequence to identify that you are indeed Tony Skinner. And that guy outside the window is indeed Batman. So whenever we do that, it's going to go through a sequence. So that first transaction we'll call block 1. After that, whenever you pay somebody else, the system is going to build off of that transaction, and it's going to call it block 2. And then when that the third person pays somebody else, that becomes block 3. Well, there's a way that if you're smarter than I am, you can get in there and get into that transition from block 1 to block 2, or from block 2 to block 3, and you can create your own block 2. And if you can do that before the rest of the system recognizes that block 2 already exists and is like a legit transaction, then you can disrupt the flow. The problem is that just like Waze uses crowdsourcing and relies on everybody else to let us know where the cops are, cryptocurrency does something similar where they use everybody else that's part of the transaction, all the different servers that it pings, to fragment out that transaction and solve different parts of the equation. And as long as everybody else solves it, then it matches up and says, yeah, we all got block 2. That's the legitimate one. I don't know where the fuck this other block 2 came from. We're basically going to discard that and move forward because everybody else is on the path of recognizing the legit one. Well, this guy that I'm listening to mentioned that there's a threshold between, I want to say it was like 23.2% of users and 50% of users. Somewhere in there is an amount where you could start influencing things and kind of commandeering the whole process.
Holy shit.
Yeah. And so I was like, that was one of my concerns with crypto, was that I just don't know enough about how it works. And Warren Buffett said, if you can't explain it to a 10-year-old or something like that, a young lad or lass, then you probably shouldn't be investing in it. And so I'm trying to take that advice to heart and being like, I just don't understand how it can't be hacked. But the beautiful part about crypto is that it's completely separate from all these other market forces that we're subject to with stocks and just holding on to a currency, like a legitimate's not the right word, but like a recognized, sanctioned
government,
foreign or government issued currency. Yeah.
That's crazy, man. I just learned so much and I still know nothing. Like,
I'm there with you. Like,
oh, cool. That's, my brother writes code for like websites and shit. And sometimes, it's the same way growing up, like playing video games and stuff. He's so smart and can understand stuff, and I love it. But his brain works on a level that mine does not. And so he'd be like, oh, all these different stats for these games we'd play, and he'd understand what that meant. And I'm like, we leveled up. And so he's telling me like, oh yeah, here's the code, and yeah, I'm writing in this language and these different things. And I'm like, all right, man, I'm going to be a good brother and just listen, but I hope you don't think that I have a clue what the fuck you're talking about.
Yeah.
Was that good?
I hope you can get to the point, because
yeah.
I'm missing it.
And I feel like it's the same thing. Like, oh, so it's like $1? and kind of like a credit card, but different, and you just use it online.
People do math to get it.
Cryptocurrency, yay!
Well, everybody, thanks for listening to Modern Day Apocrypha. We hope you enjoyed this episode.
Yeah, quickest episode ever, because, I mean...
Bro, I'm there with you, though. Like, I can't... That's why I'm scared to jump into it. Because I just... Everybody else says that it's good. Like, people much smarter than I am that understand coding and how programming works, like at its core, and have read source code on the whole way that Bitcoin is mined, processed, transacted, if that's a word.
It is, and I like the pause in the middle of it. Great effect.
And it's just for emphasis. And they're like, yeah, they sign off on it. So, you know, I feel like at a certain point, you just got to trust people. But you mentioned China had invested factories. And that's kind of the thing that makes me think more about the cryptocurrencies, is that it takes estimated billions of dollars to get to that level of market share for a cryptocurrency. And it would probably have to be on one of the lower players like Litecoin maybe.
Right.
To get that market share to where you can disrupt it. But the fact that you can is concerning.
Exactly. But let's be real. If you look at any other currency,
yes,
you can still disrupt that shit. So I feel like it's not as legitimate of a fear as you think it is, because it's always possible. Now we're just aware of it. That's the only difference.
Right.
And we're just at the beginning of a technology. And so because it's something new, and our brain, when we don't have a place to reference, we're extra cautious and extra afraid and hesitant of, yeah, I don't know if this is safe. Well, currency wasn't always a thing. And we just grew up with it. It's always been a thing in our lifetime. So there was no question of it. We observed our parents and people in society handing currency for stuff, to pay bills, to buy food, to buy toys, to whatever. It was just normal. That's just how life worked. Well, now that we're seeing a different way, we're going, well, we're questioning this. Mm-hmm. We just skipped the questioning process on something else because it was told to us as normal.
Yeah, so like think about, I love that analogy. Like if you think about the transition from cash to debit and credit cards,
yep.
I wasn't around for that transition, but I could imagine being in that situation, being like, well, somebody could get my card numbers, or maybe they've got a mag swipe. And they do. It's true. I've had my shit stolen or hacked, or however they get my credit card information. And the reality is that, like, could it be a big deal? It certainly could be, but it hasn't been for the vast majority of people who even have experienced something like that. And then I don't mean to be too political with this, but like if I look at the fuckers of the Federal Reserve, they're doing some crazy whack stuff to begin with. So like, I'd rather just, at this point, I'd rather just trust that nobody's going to get 23.2% of the market share and start fucking around with stuff, even though it's theoretically possible.
Or at least that's the hope, right? Whereas with the cryptocurrency and that 23% threshold that you're talking about, there's at least a threshold. With all of these other government-controlled currencies, there's no threshold. There's whoever gets to be in charge of it gets to make the choices and point the direction, and we typically don't get a say in that at all. We don't get to be part of that conversation.